Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Jennifer Cohen wants you to live the life you want, not the life you get. Let's find out why. Jennifer, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Jennifer, I love your book, Bigger, Better, Bolder, and that's what we want to find out about today. And you talk about living the life we really want. Can you tell us a little more, like when you talk to people, what makes them stay in that life that they're not happy with?
Well, what I think really happens is that people tend to just acquiesce and accept what is in front of them as opposed to chasing what they really want. So what my philosophy is to get people into a place where they actually chase what they want and not just accept what they get, and to curate and design a life that they really want and take ownership of that versus just living in this space of good enough.
Early in your book, you say you advise readers to ask themselves, what do you want most in life and why don't you have it? What are the answers you get back from people, or do they just stop and start thinking and get scared?
I think a lot of times people either they're not 100% sure. They usually have a kernel of an idea what they'd like to do in a dream, but they don't have the courage to actually go after it. And usually it's because of their fear. There's a lot of fear of failure, fear of being rejected, being not good enough. So overall, it's usually self-doubt that stops people from making those moves, those bold moves, as I call it. That's how you end up kind of living in this good enough mentality and taking what's available in front of you and living this, I'm not miserable. I'm not happy. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. And they kind of live their life in this like very middle of the road area.
Well, I've going through your book, I know it's made me want to get bigger and better and bolder. And I think just reading it and having it around, and it's made me think when I talk to someone like, am I being bold or am I being reticent? Am I kind of falling back? And if Jennifer was here, what would she say to me? Now, of course, it's because I'm preparing to interview you today and talk about it, but it really did have an effect, and I'm going to keep it by me because obviously it can only lead to good things. You mentioned that this is not a get-rich-quick book, but a make your life rich. What's the difference?
Well, I think right now in the zeitgeist, it's all about money, making, success. And to me, being successful isn't only about being financially successful. I think, what I define as having a rich life is having a life that's full of meaning, having meaningful relationships, meaningful experiences, feeling satiated and fulfilled. And that comes in lots of different areas, right? That's not just professionally, but that's also personally. And so what I try to, really teach people is to really focus on a holistic approach to have a real rich life that really entails all of those things I just mentioned versus being very myopic in one area. Because if your only goal is to make money does not equal happiness, does not equal fulfillment. It's one piece of the pie, but it's not the full thing. And so I really try to really hammer in the message of living a rich life with all the things, fulfillment, satisfaction, authenticity, all of those things.
And I think based on previous guests, that's exactly what they tell us. It's not, while we might think, just give me the money and I'll be happy. It's really not that. In fact, the professors that we've had on and the experts in the field always say our happiness must come first, then success follows, not the other way around. So if we follow your advice and follow their advice, we're going to hit that goal.
Well, I think what happens a lot of times, people think that money brings happiness. And with my podcast, Habits and Hustle, I interview the most extraordinarily successful people on the planet, basically, right? and, try to glean some information from them of how they've become successful and what makes them tick and productivity. And from all the people I've spoken to on the podcast, also my private life, my friends, the reality is what makes people happy is love and having relationships that are meaningful and doing things that you love to do. And there's like a weird thing right now where it's all about money makes you happy. Now, the truth, like I said earlier, is it's a piece of it, but it's not the whole that's not the whole thing. And if you're only going after money, my book is not for you.
Well, we appreciate that because you come right out and say it. In fact, you're very open about things and you talk about your own life. And I've taken this straight from your book. You say you were an average student at best. And yet here you are advising the most successful people in the world, having a top flight book, having a podcast, being on our show. What could be more successful, right? So,
right, exactly.
Tell us, what kicked you over that hump? Because you would think, especially again, you almost say that you had to strive to be average, and yet look at the success you've had. Is it all in boldness? And when did it come to you that, hey, if I'm bold, I can just get out there and pass a lot of the people in the race?
Right. I think there's a couple things there. I think, first of all, we put too much emphasis on school academics to define where we're going to be in life. I think that there's lots of different types of smarts. Number one. Number two, I believe that the secret sauce to success is boldness, not being smart. I think a lot of times when you're too smart, you tend to overthink things. And when you overthink, you can think of all the things that can go wrong. Therefore, you don't even attempt at something. And you get into this whole analysis paralysis mentality. Versus if you're bold and you're more impulsive, you don't overthink. You can think of all the things that go right and you're in action. So things in motion stay in motion, right? So life is momentum based. And what I learned pretty early on is that if I just stay in action and movement and go for it, I may not even get to the goal I'm looking for, but another opportunity will present itself by just going down the path because I'm in motion. Nothing happens when you're stagnant. No opportunities come your way in life, right? You have to be out there, being curious, being bold, because boldness is the secret sauce. And that's really what I've done. I kind of learned early on that through my bold, basically like building my bold muscle, that's when doors started to really open. And that's when a lot of opportunities came my way. And so I kept on building that bold muscle as I went through life.
And as you mentioned about your show, and you say that in the blurb about your show, your podcast is called Habits and Hustle. And you say you interview guests, and these are wildly successful guests, but they've all faced rejection and failure along the way. They may not tell us that, and they don't advertise it, and their PR agents don't put it out there so much. But the best actresses, singers, rock stars, they were turned down many times before they hit the big time. Am I correct?
There's not a person on the planet that I can think of that's not been rejected, right? Usually to get to levels of success, it takes the people who failed the most succeed the most down the road, right? Because it leads them to where they're supposed to be. The reality is when you do fail, that's a dot that will be connected to some other dot later on that you just don't know at the moment, right? But a lot of times those failures lead you to what you're supposed to be doing and what you're meant to be doing. So it's about really getting comfortable with failure. I mean, if you're not someone who's comfortable with failure, you should get comfortable because that's how you're going to lead to where you're truly supposed to be. And you should reframe what failure means to you. To me, failure is just an attempt. 1 attempt, 2 attempts, 3 attempts at whatever I want. And I reframe the word failure because failure is like, for whatever reason, a dirty word. I don't think of it that way. To me, it's just one attempt of many to get to where I want to be.
And Jennifer, one of the notes I put down here on my question sheet, you ask, and I think it's so well put, what's the worst thing that can happen, right?
Right. What is the worst thing that can happen? That's, to me, what I say, and I tell people to say all the time, like you're not any worse off now than you would be before if you make the attempt and then nothing happens for you, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You're still in the same place that you were. So don't let that stop you from that possibility. The other thing I always say is, why not me, right? Why not me? I mean, if it can happen to so-and-so and so-and-so and Joe Blow, why can't it happen to me? You have to be audacious in your boldness and be audacious enough to believe it can happen to you like it could happen to anybody else. And that's a mindset, that's a belief system that we have to really hone and harness, or else we're just going to be living in the mundane, in the good enough realm, which is exactly the opposite of what I try to explain and tell people and push for people.
Jennifer, before we go further, it's time to let our audience know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Jennifer Cohen. Her book is Bigger, Better, Bolder. And Jennifer, we're going to ask you, is there a website where we can learn more information and find out more about your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to jennifercohen.com. Cohen. They can also follow me in all the social media channels at The Real Jen Cohen. That's one N. And they can listen to my podcast, Habits and Hustle. It's anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever, Stitcher.
And it's brief and to the point. And I've listened to a couple of the podcasts and I like it. It's short. It gets right to the point, and it kind of keeps that inspiration going. It's like, if you go to the gym just a few minutes every day, you will be fitter, thinner, more athletic. And that's, to me, what your podcast does for the listener. By the way, if someone is listening to our show and would like to recommend it to a friend, you can go to nccradio.org and just look for Secrets of Success. And then our guest, Jennifer Cohen, Bigger, Better, Bolder. Listen to a podcast. You can listen to it anytime at your convenience. Now, you mentioned in the book that happiness is a destination, but boldness is a direction. Can you talk about that?
What I say, yeah. So what I tell people is it's not about the destination, or what I tell people actually is that you don't have to have, like when people are like, what if I don't know what I want? What if I don't know what I want? That's the question I get a lot. You asked me in the beginning of this show, what holds people back? Something is like they don't know what they want. And so what I tell people is you don't have to have the destination. Just pick a direction. Pick an area that you're interested in, that you have passion over, or where you have just general interest, and start moving down that direction, and things will work itself out as you go. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have that exact precise goal, but have something that moves you in some way, and then go down that path. And I can't stress enough, Bill, the importance of action and inertia, right? Something in motion stays in motion. When you stay stagnant, nothing happens. No opportunities come your way. You don't meet anyone. You don't know anything. There's no community. There's no connection. But when you're in the groove, when you're starting to do things, you learn what you kind of learn more about what you want, what you don't want, opportunities, things that are that are in the zeitgeist for you. So you have to be in motion.
Now, I think it's on page 19 in your book. If you haven't convinced our listeners already, you actually give a lot of good reasons why someone should be bold. So can you relay a couple of those reasons to us?
Yeah, I say bold people push the limits. They break through this system. They don't really, they're not really people subjects of conformity. They accept rejection, right? They get more comfortable with failure than people who are not bold. Bold people have great stories to tell because they live life. When you live life, you have stories to tell that are engaging, that draw people in. And most importantly, bold people create opportunity. Right? They go for it. Bold people go for it. They create their own opportunities. They create their own luck. And to me, bold people just take action. And that is, at the end of the day, what we need. We need to be people who make our own opportunities, create our own luck by taking action, by going out there and making basically being the CEO of our own life, being in control of how our life ends up and how we live our life.
We had someone on the show, and he, by his own admission, said he was kind of a below-average looking person, but he used to have these beautiful dates throughout college and in his early 20s, and people would ask him why, and he said, I just ask people out. He said, I get turned down a lot, but I do wind up with lovely people for dates. I've met a very vast selection of possible future mates, and this is what he wanted in life, and I guess he followed your advice even before you gave it to him, and he was bold before his time.
See?
Now what about...
It doesn't mean, I cannot stress enough the fact that it is not the prettiest people, the most talented people, and the smartest people who get to the finish line and live the life of that they want. It's the people who actually ask for what they want, put themselves out there and do it anyway. If they're uncomfortable, they do it anyway. If they have self-doubt, it doesn't stop them. They do it anyway. People have to do it anyway, even if it makes you uncomfortable. And that's how you get over the fear of failure. That's how you become desensitized to that feeling. And that's how you live the life you want.
And I love that subtitle. Of course, the title of your book is Bigger, Better, Bolder. But the subtitle, Live the Life You Want, Not the Life You Get. So I think for a lot of us, that really hits a chord. And we think, wait a minute, I'm just doing this because the boss gave me this, or someone advised me to take that position or help me get that job. But that's not really what I want. And I think that's a real wake-up call for all of us. But what about someone who comes to you and says, Jennifer, this is good advice, but I'm just not a bold person. Is this like exercise? Can they get stronger in it? Can we be bold, or are we kind of born either we're a little more of the quiet, sit back person or the outward aggressive person?
Great question. I believe that boldness is a skill like anything else. If you want to get good at it, you have to practice it and harness it. I don't think that you have to, people think that you're either born bold or you're not. And that's just a lie. People can get better at boldness just like anything else they want to get good at. If they want to get good at karate, Spanish, pickleball, you need to practice and play. Just the same with boldness. You got to practice being bold by doing little things every day, little bold moves that make you bolder. If you're uncomfortable asking for the big things in life, how are you going to if you're uncomfortable asking for the little things in life, I should say, how are you going to get comfortable asking for the big things? So start small and practice. It's like a muscle, right? Like the more you do something, the more you practice something, the more it grows, it builds, it gets stronger. And I think that like anything else, you got to be consistent or else it atrophies. The same thing. Boldness is something that you're bold for life. You got to keep on putting yourself in these situations where you're doing these little bold moves. And in my book, I have an entire workbook where people could really work that bold muscle and get better. And there's a whole workbook system on how to do that.
Now, I think it's on page 29 in your book. You have 5 personality traits. And whenever I go through questions for guests, I actually ask myself, is this really true? And does this work in my life? And I try to think of people I know, etc. And I thought these were very good personality traits because these are the people that I tend to like and I tend to do more for. And I would extend myself and I would hope vice versa. Can you tell us about those traits?
Oh, the big 5 personality traits include openness to experience, which is like curious versus cautious. Another one is conscientiousness, organized versus careless, agreeableness, friendly versus critical. There's all sorts of different personality types. But what I really talk about is that there's also different bold types, right? You could be someone who's really bold in one area of your life, but really kind of meek and timid in another area. So a part of this is having some self-awareness and reflectiveness and say to yourself, you know what area of my life do I need to kind of step up a little bit and, be a little more bold to have more of what I'm looking for. You could be professionally super bold, right, in your career, but then you let your personal life take a back seat. So if that's the case, maybe you should be working on really being more bold in your personal life versus in your professional life, right? So it's about having that come to Jesus moment with yourself, having some clarity of where you need to be more bold and step up, and then act accordingly.
Now, Jennifer, again, I want our audience to know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Jennifer Cohen, Cohen. Her book is Bigger, Better, Bolder, and the subtitle I love, Live the Life You Want, Not the Life You Get. Jennifer, can you tell us the website where we can learn more?
Well, they can go to my website, which is jennifercohen.com, Cohen. They can also they can get the book, by the way, on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever fine books are sold, right? And they can also always follow me on social media if that's something that they rather do. So at The Real Jen Cohen.
And I will tell our audience, this is kind of the perfect prototype book for our show. If it's the first time you're listening or if you've been listening to our show for 30 years, this is the book that will get you off your butt, get you moving, and let's see if you can start living that life. Even if you move 50%, that's 50% more fun, more enjoyment, more fulfillment of life than you're enjoying right now. Now, you have a saying in your book, and I thought I copied it incorrectly the first time. Saying is believing. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's really important to how you speak to yourself and how you think about things, because words have meaning to them. And it's about reframing how you see certain things in your life, right? Like negative self-talk, talking to yourself negatively, negative self-talk is a real deterrent from you going after the life you want, right? So reframing ways you see things, how you talk to yourself, saying things that will give you the confidence. Like I said earlier, like the whole why not me? Being audacious with who you are, thinking that like if it can happen to someone else, why not? Or what's the worst that can happen? Phrases like this hopefully get you out of that like feeling of being stuck. And if you could be brave for 10 seconds and, put yourself out there for 10 seconds, 20 seconds for the unknown, that's a really great way to train yourself to go, to make it, to keep on asking for what it is or going after what that was.
We've always heard the expression board of directors, but you talk about something called a bold, B-O-L-D, of directors. What is that? I call
it the bold of directors because I think we are a lump sum of the 5 people we surround ourselves with. So being around people or surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, who bring you up, who pull you up, who are people that are like your support system is super, super important, right? To me, nobody is self-made, Bill. I think everybody needs a really strong support system and team around them so they can really kind of self-actualize. And so for me, it's really important to explain to people to surround themselves with people who want them to win. And who you take advice from is so important, right? Like I learned really early on that if I'm asking for advice from somebody who's never experienced what I'm trying to do, it's probably the wrong person to ask because they may come to the table with a whole lot of reasons why I shouldn't do it because they're fearful, they don't know, they have ignorance around it. So I'm very, very cautious and conscientious of who I do ask that stuff from. So building out a bold of directors is super important for your success in life, both personally and, of course, professionally.
In your book, you mentioned one of my favorite TV characters, and I always like to read. Now you know who I'm talking about, yes. Would you please explain the George Costanza effect? And for those who don't know, George Costanza was a character on the Seinfeld show that's still in reruns, and he's kind of a famous character and maybe one of the ones we refer to the most. Why is he mentioned in your book?
I love that. Yes. So, there's an episode on Seinfeld that really resonated with me as a kid, younger, right? Like it was this idea that George is, and this is him saying it, not me. I don't want to get any emails, but he is a short, overweight, bald guy who lives at home with his family, can't keep a job, can't find a girlfriend. He's basically like an overall life loser, making bad decisions constantly. And on this particular episode, one day he decided to do the opposite of whatever he normally does to see if his luck will change. And so he started to do the opposite of what he normally does. And then lo and behold, his life started to turn around. He meets his dream girl. He gets a job at the Yankees. everything started to like fall into place properly. And I use him as an example because what I say to people is like, if you want a different outcome, you got to do something different, right? Like you can't expect to have a different, outcome if you're doing the same thing over and over again. And I use him as an example because to me, if you're somebody who's doing the same thing and then expecting something out that's not that, you're going to be very disappointed. So try to do something the opposite. So if you normally say no to new experiences, say yes. If you normally say no to new restaurants, say yes. If you normally say no to going to a party with your friend, say yes. Start doing everything the opposite for 1 week that you would normally otherwise do. And I think you would be shocked and hopefully amazed at like how things start to turn around for you.
And as you said in the book, what's the worst thing that can happen?
What's the worst that can happen, right? You'll be right back to where you began, which is no further along, right?
No, it's perfect. And in 30 seconds, can you tell us about what is it called, the 10% treatment or the 10% rule that you have in your book?
Oh, the 10% target. The 10% target is basically you pick something that you want, a goal in mind, pick one goal, and then make 10 attempts at it. And the reason is most people don't make one attempt. Almost nobody makes 2 attempts. But if you're somebody who makes 10 attempts, number one, just a numbers game, your volume, you're going to have a better chance of getting what you want. But the bigger thing is that you actually may not get what you want, but going through these 10 attempts, another opportunity will present itself that you never even knew existed by going down this path. And you get more comfortable with that failing because now you're putting yourself out there. So it's really, it's twofold, right? It's getting you comfortable with failure, right? Becoming immune to the feeling because you're doing something over and over again. And it's also making you do something to get to that goal and showing you that another opportunity can present itself, even if you don't reach that goal, by just doing movement, by acting.
Jennifer, again, I want to wrap up by telling our audience, if you missed it already before, the book is Bigger, Better, Bolder. Live the life you want, not the life you get, by our guest, Jennifer Cohen. And also, Jennifer, tell us the title of that podcast that we should look for.
Oh, it's called Habits and Hustle. And you can find it anywhere on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you normally listen to podcasts.
And I can tell our audience it's a lot of fun. It's short and to the point. And between that and the book, we're going to be a success within the next week. We'll be the next George Costanza. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to let our audience know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.